Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where you are joining from. I'm Aisha from On Time Training and Consultancy Services. I am their lead consultant and strategic partner for training and advisory. Some of the programs I'm leading are ACP, PBA, CPMAI, PMP. And today we are going to dive into session 9 of 9 of our PMP mini marathons before the July 9th change happens, right? So let's dive into the first question. Today's session is primarily on hybrid, an important part of the exam. So yes, let's dive into it. I'm going to launch the poll. Okay. Uh, Let us look at this question. Near final readiness, an external change affects one part of a multinational rollout. Okay. The impact is not yet clear, and determining the required adjustments may take longer than the remaining time before launch. So we know that one component is affected, one component of rollout is affected, and we do not yet know what the impact would be, right? But we do know that it's going to impact the schedule, the launch date. Delaying the entire rollout would cause committed resources, schedule, facilities, and market windows in other locations to be lost. Okay, so we'll have to suffer some consequences. There will be some issues. There will be some losses, right? If we delay the launch date. Leadership decides that the affected location will not launch with the others, but the remaining launches should continue, right? So they've decided that whatever we can do in whatever locations, whatever areas the launch could happen, it's going to happen. And the one in which it's affected, we're going to think about it, what to do about it, right? How should the project manager replan the project? Okay. So this is clearly a situation in which about the component, about the part of the rollout in which some uncertainty has arisen, and we do not yet know the impact, right? So something that points towards agile. This kind of work would favor agile, but the rest of the locations rollout remain the same. Like they are steady, nothing changes with them, and they could be done in a very planned manner through a predictive method, right? So the question is, how should the project manager replan the project? Use the contingency budget to cover sunken costs for the delayed launch and adjust plans for the other launches. Okay, replan the project as a fully agile set of iterations and ensure that fixed milestones are documented on the burn down chart. Not a good way, like why would you touch other parts which are already, they're not impacted, there's no uncertainty about it. Why would you do that, right? Plan analysis activities and toll gates for the affected launch and crash the schedule for other launches. Okay. Embed a set of iterations to analyze and develop the affected scope while adjusting plans for the other launches. Now, we know that just looking at the responses, one or two are outright the wrong answers, right? But a couple of them would be closer to the actual answer, right? You will have a hard time deciding between the two. Over here, the distractors are using the contingency budget. This, even if you use that budget, right, it's not going to solve the planning problem. The question primarily asked, specifically asked about how the project manager would replan the project, right? So it will, not address whatever uncertainty of scope or the impact and what needs to be done to cover that impact and all of that, right? So this is an incorrect option. Replan the project is a fully agile set of iterations and ensure the fixed milestones are documented on the burn down chart. Okay. This would be like, an overreaction. Why would you, if some things are running smooth, parts of the project can be launched very smoothly. Why would you want to create more dynamism in it? Why would you want to take the entire thing to agile, right? Okay, one part is uncertain, but the rest of it is fine, right? It could be done as planned through a predictive manner. So this would cause a lot of rework, give rise to more risks and everything, and it doesn't make sense, like just reinventing the wheel. Plan analysis activities and toll gates for the affected launch and crash the schedule for other launches. Okay, toll gates would help maybe find out cause, maybe rectify what went wrong with that specific launch. But why would you crash the other components, the other launches, right, in other locations? There's no indication in the question that there's some kind of a schedule delay on other components as well. So crashing would again be overwork and an unrequired activity, a waste, in fact, right? And it would introduce unnecessary kind of risk in itself, because in the question it's not indicated that the other components are also at a risk of delay or something like that. So in this case, embedding a set of iterations to analyze and develop the affected scope while adjusting plan for other launches. Yes, now we have two kind of planning needs. One for that launch component that has become uncertain, right? You need to analyze it. You need to develop the affected scope and adapt to it. In this case, whenever there's uncertainty, unknown scope and things, iterative ways are much better, right? Agile ways are much more better. They would help the team explore what uncertainty or what risk there is and refine whatever solution needs to be created, right? And the other launches will move forward as planned, right? So they are moving forward. You just need to adjust the plan and roll them out accordingly. Adjust on which location you launch first, which location next, and so on and so forth, right? So you just need to adjust the plans over there. But for one specific rollout, you actually need to run iterations to figure out the risk and the refined scope. Okay, a company is rolling out a new transaction terminal capability across many branch locations. Each location should be activated as soon as local readiness is confirmed. Okay, so we know that there's not a dependency between different regions, and the one location can roll out as soon as it is locally ready. Several conditions may prevent a location from moving forward at the last moment, including site access, third-party connectivity, local approval, and equipment arrival. Once a location clears the readiness checkpoint, however, the installation and activation steps are standard. So we know that there could be some potential blockers in locations arising from these different factors. But once they are cleared, for every single location, the installation and activation steps are standard. Which project approach would be best? Would best support the goal of maximizing the number of locations activated. Like, so you want to activate the maximum number of locations, right? And what project management lifecycle, what project management approach or method would enable you to do that? A fully predictive cycle where each location activation is a phase subject to dependencies. A set of agile activation iterations embedded in a predictive set of processes. A set of predictive activation sequences embedded in a set of agile processes. A fully agile life cycle where dependencies and activations are combined in each iteration, right? So again, we'll see that there is two are outright wrong, and one could be a bit confusing. Let us look at the distractors first. A fully predictive life cycle where each location activation is a phase subject to dependencies. The question explicitly says that there are a couple of factors which would make that specific phase, that specific point dynamic, right? So you can't map predictive life cycle throughout that project, right? You can't do it because there's uncertainty involved at a certain location. There are dependencies over there, right? So it could not happen. It does not support, it will not support activation of maximum location, right? It would actually slow down the process, right? A set of agile activation iterations embedded in a predictive set of processes. Okay. See, the activation steps we saw from the question just a couple of moments ago, that activation steps are pretty standard. They do not require an agile process. They do not require iterations, right? Uncertainty exists in the steps before the activation. And team, when the team is checking the checklist that, okay, this is ready, this factor is ready, were a couple of factors that they needed to check: site access, third-party connectivity, local approval, and equipment arrival. These are the things that are basically dynamic from one location to another, right? So it wouldn't make sense that something that is standard, you would map an agile process to that, right? And activation, as we saw, is a pretty standard process in this question. So B also doesn't make sense. A fully agile life cycle where dependence, this was like, a close one, the closer one to the answer, the confusing one, not the close one, but in fact the confusing one. A fully agile life cycle where dependencies and activations are combined in each cycle. Again, over here, if something is pretty standard, the activation steps and the rollout steps are pretty standard, then why would you reinvent the wheel? Why would you map the agile life cycle over the entire project, right? If things could be done more efficiently through picking the parts that run smoothly with predictive methodology and picking the parts or phases which would be successful with agile, right? So these three options are wrong in this case. Option C is correct, and option C says a set of predictive activation sequences embedded in a set of agile processes. Yes, we saw that activation was smooth and predictive and planned. So that's what we are going to do. And we are going to embed it in a set of agile processes, right? Whenever any location becomes ready, like whatever location becomes ready, it checks all those boxes. We trigger activation, and then we launch the solution in that particular location, right? Question number 3, please. This is a multiple choice question. 1.5 minutes are up. Let's look at the question. An organization is reviewing several upcoming initiatives after repeated concerns that some finished deliverables no longer match user needs by the time they are released. Okay. The organization is not satisfied. Leadership wants to improve delivery outcomes, but different departments have different levels of uncertainty, governance needs, and stakeholder involvement. So different requirements basically coming up from different departments. Which two actions can the project manager take to start helping the company adopt agile methodologies? So we clearly know that this scenario is about a transition state, right? We know that they were predictive, but they want to adopt agile methods and framework because of the diversified needs of different departments and the different types of risk and whatever, right? So basically, it's a transition scenario. So which two options would be correct in this case? Ensure that the Moscow method is used to write all project requirements. Analyze all planned projects to pick the appropriate agile model. Show stakeholders how agile can increase quality and decrease risk. Train the project teams to be more self-reliant and cross-functional. Okay. This is like, sometimes PMP questions would like to confuse you. Not sometimes, in fact, all the time. And the entire, like, the context over here is okay, it's good enough, it's telling you the situation, but the crux of the question lies over here, right? Two actions, right? And what those two actions would be the best options out of four to help the organization transition to agile. You will analyze all planned projects to pick the appropriate agile model. You look at the different segments, look at the tailoring requirements for each part of the project. And you will not just do a blanket agile over everything, right? So you know that evaluating your entire project, some components would be, for some components, agile would be a better fit. For some components, you maybe want to practice hybrid, and some components should, the ones that are thoroughly planned, no uncertainty, fixed scope, and those kind of things, they would stay predictive, right? So the first step towards moving towards agile in any during any transition is first to analyze where agile is a good fit, right? And if it's not, then you just leave those things alone, right? You don't do a blanket cover. So that's what you're going to do first, right? So this is one of the options that is correct when transitioning. D, train project teams to be more self-reliant and cross-functional. Yes, you have to introduce that agile mindset among your people as well, right? Agile adoption would not come in any organization until and unless the mindset of stakeholders across the board becomes agile. And this is what option D offers, right? You instill that kind of a mindset in which teams are self-organizing, and they are cross-functional, a contained team in which all kinds of capabilities that are required, mostly they are present within the same team. So you have to instill that mindset while you are transitioning from predictive to agile. The distractors here is, see, this Moscow for writing project requirements is a technique, and it's a prioritization technique, right? When you have this list of work given to you, and you just need to prioritize what you need to do first from the business value perspective, right? And it's not a requirements writing method. Also, over here, we are talking about the most helpful things that would make it easier for the organization to transition. Using Moscow for project requirements would be a very specific kind of an action, not an overall strategy for bringing yourself from predictive to agile. Show stakeholders how agile can increase quality and decrease risk. Now, this is a good distractor. I would say it's a good distractor. And actually, agile is efficient at decreasing risk. But this would be kind of a vague statement, right? It doesn't give you a mindset kind of a thing, right? For a transitioning organization, mindset would be more beneficial. Sometimes just explaining that, okay, it will decrease quality, decrease risk and increase quality may not be so fruitful, may not have the kind of impact which a mindset shift requires, right? It is too broad. It's not specific, and it will not stand true for each and every project situation as well, right? So this is why it's not one of the best answers in this case. Okay, let's go to question number 4. I'll launch the poll. Okay, looks like we have some variation in the responses, but let us look at the question and try figuring out what's the best answer. A pharmaceutical manufacturer is implementing a new quality operations platform across 3 areas. Again, it's a distributed effort. The batch release dashboard and deviation triage workspace are expected to be adjusted as quality reviewers begin using early versions. So you know that using early versions, and there's an expectation that you would be improving them, right? So because there are clear indicators over there. The validation evidence package, however, must align with booked audit windows. Okay, so we have something planned specifically. So, and the validation package should align to those audit windows. Predefined sign-off points, okay, fixed schedule, and the company's approved compliance sequence. So there's an added angle of compliance to it, right? So we know, again, one part of the project remains a bit dynamic, and we are going to keep on improving our dashboards and the triage workspace depending on the reviewers' feedback. But we know that there's one component, the validation part, which will have a set of activities that are pretty standard and pretty planned, right? And not a lot of change is not expected over there. What project lifecycle should the project manager use? Select a fully agile model using one shared backlog and fixed length iterations for all outputs. Select a fully predictive model using the baseline plans and formal change control for all outputs. Select a hybrid model. Position the changing outputs as predictive phases embedded in an overall agile project. Select a hybrid model. Position the fixed sequence output as predictive phase embedded in an overall agile project. Okay. Again, why are we, we just assess from the situation. There were certain keywords, if you look closely, that, okay, they're using early versions, and these two elements, the dashboard and the triage workspace, are expected to be adjusted, right? So we need to iteratively improve them. So that part indicates agile. And we know that the evidence package needs to be delivered in a very planned manner, right? And everything is pretty standard about it, right? The company's compliance equals will stay standard about it. There are fixed sign-off points, which indicates that this part of the project could be very efficiently handled through the predictive methods, right? So in this case, selecting a hybrid model is definitely the answer, right? But we know that in option C and D, you have some clauses indicating different situations, right? Selecting a hybrid model, let me just use the annotator. Selecting a hybrid model, position the changing outputs as predictive phases. When changing outputs are there, why would you go for a predictive phase? This would be changing outputs would be handled through the agile framework, right? So we won't list them under predictive phases embedded in an overall agile projects, right? Because there's dynamism, there's change expected. Why would you use a predictive phase? It would include a lot of risk, and it would it would reduce the value and stuff like that. So that's wrong over here, right? Select a fully predictive model using baseline plans and formal change control for all outputs. No, we saw that the workspace triage and another component was bound to be changed. The reviewers are going to be giving a feedback. So an overall shift to predictive doesn't make sense over here. Selecting a fully agile model using one shared backlog and fixed iterations for all outputs. No, we know that some of the components of the project are fixed, some compliance expectations, some sign-off points, some milestone points, they are fixed, and they will be delivered that way, right? Unnecessarily, you will not move towards agile, right? This is one thing, if you can take away from any hybrid lesson, would be that you do not force agile onto your entire project. You are being strategic about it, right? You look at the circumstances, look at the components, what requires agile, what requires predictive, and then move to that, right? You don't do a blanket cover, which is what A is suggesting in this case. So we will go with the hybrid model. position the fixed sequence output as predictive. Fixed sequence was the compliance and the sign off point and all of that, embedded in an overall agile project. You holistically, you are going to manage it as an agile project, but you will have those predictive components pretty defined and set it and embedded within that agile project. Okay, let us move to question number 5, please. Let me launch the. Let's take a look at this one. A product team is delivering a new service through short iterations, while a related infrastructure component is managed through a baseline schedule and toll gates, right? Again, these questions are intentionally, I've structured them the way they are structured on the screen is because on the exam, you will notice these kind of mixed things mentioned upfront on the question itself. During an iteration review, the stakeholders request an enhancement that would improve user adoption, but would also change the approved infrastructure configuration, right? Okay, we know that the question already indicated that the infrastructure component is managed through a fixed methodology, through a baseline schedule with toll gates. Both of these keywords indicate a predictive way of managing this particular component. And you are doing something as you as a project manager have received a request that something needs to be enhanced, which would impact this component, this infrastructure configuration, but it would also be helpful at the same time, right? What should you do as a project manager? Ask the product owner to add the enhancement to backlog and allow the team to implement it in the next iteration. As a project manager, you do not dictate your team, right? And again, this is not the best way to go about it, that you instruct the team to just implement. Ask the product owner that, okay, you add it to the backlog and prioritize it, and ask the team to implement it, not an agile mindset. Reject the enhancement because predictive components cannot change one's baseline. This is wrong. We do not want to. We would be very mindful of changing any baselines, but baselines do change. And you don't, as a first step, you don't outright reject the enhancement, specifically when it's already indicated in the question that it's going to be useful, right? It's going to improve the user adoption. So you won't outright just reject it without looking at the pros and cons and stuff. Work with the product owner to assess the value and impact, update the backlog as appropriate, and process a change request for the affected baseline component. So now this is basically a question of hybrid change management. How do you manage change in hybrid scenarios, right? Okay, in this case, what we are, let's park this answer here for a second and move to option D. Convert the infrastructure work to agile so that both parts of the project can accept changes through backlog refinement. No, we don't. Once if it's decided that something is moving in a predictive way, then we handle it that way. Again, we will not do a blanket agile conversion over here as well. Which leaves C. Whenever there's a conflict, not really a conflict, but there's a pros and cons of something, taking some requirement and taking some better step in, then the first thing you are going to do is evaluate. You're going to assess the value of that change and how it's going to impact all of your project components, how it's going to impact the agile components, but then how it's going to impact the predictive parts of your project, right? After this first assessment, you will update the backlog as appropriate pertaining to that specific enhancement work, and process a change request for the affected baseline component. In this case, it was the infrastructure configuration, right, which was a part of a baseline, right? So you are going to submit a change request to to manage that baseline component, that infrastructure configuration component, right? So yeah, that's that. Okay, once again, we have some mixed responses for this question as well. A project includes a digital capability that is being refined through frequent demonstrations. Okay. A physical component required for the final release has a long procurement lead time, fixed inspection dates, and limited installation windows, right? So we know that there's a digital capability that we are building, but there's a physical component that integrates with that digital capability to produce a single solution, the complete solution, right? And the agile team is concerned that waiting for the physical component may delay validation of the digital capability. They are concerned about their own timelines, right? Their own maybe sprint lengths or whatever, their own delivery dates or whatever. And they're concerned that if we delay the validation of that specific digital capability, if we wait for that physical component, there's definitely going to be a delay in our part of the work, right? What should the project manager do? Track the procurement work separately and allow the agile team to continue until the component arrives. Okay. Add the physical component work to the product backlog and let the product owner reprioritize it. Integrate the procurement milestones into release planning and coordinate early validation options with the agile team. Okay. Delay all demonstrations until the physical component is available to avoid rework. Okay. Let us look at the options, right? And again, two of them would be outright, you would be able to identify that they don't make any sense. One would definitely be closer or maybe confusing with the correct answer. So the distractors in this case are track the procurement work separately and allow the agile team to continue until the component arrives. See, you know that you have to give a unified solution. There's a dependency between the physical component and the digital validation thing, right? They need to be integrated to produce one complete solution. If you take the physical component and track it separately, chances are that you would be creating a silo, right? Without integrating the physical component with there would definitely be dependencies which you will definitely miss out if you keep the physical component separate and the agile delivery separate. This is a single solution, so it needs to be integrated, right? They would discover that it may give a rise to many risks. And you must have noticed in a lot of PMP questions that whenever we delay something like non-functional requirements or something or some kind of integration and keep it for the end, the risk will rise, right? So you can't create a silo, you can't proceed with the digital work and keep the physical component apart, right? It will give rise to a lot of risk downstream when you're about to launch and all of that. Add the physical component work to the product backlog and let the owner reprioritize it, right? So it's physical product is not your backlog item, right? We know from the question scenario that it has its own procurement time, it has its audit and inspection days, it's going to be installed, and then there's going to be a particular schedule for all of those activities to happen. You simply just can't place it in the backlog and prioritize it and ask the agile team that, okay, make this work. How this does not even make any sense. Delay all demonstrations until physical component is available to avoid rework. No, delaying all demonstrations will create a lot of waste, right? And you will miss opportunities and you will delay the schedule as well, right? There would be some parts of the digital capability that the team can validate early. They should work on validating those parts early, right? Gather the feedback from the stakeholders, reduce risk and everything before the physical component arrives. And when it does, you are going to integrate it. So you don't delay everything just because one component is missing. Integrate the procurement milestones into release planning and coordinate early validation options with the agile team. Yes, that is the correct way to go about it, right? Into the broader release map and release planning activities, you will integrate the procurement milestones, which are fixed, which will be done in a predictive way, and then look at the options which allow for early validation, right? So that is what you're going to do. It's a dependency problem, so you'll have to deal with it like this. Okay, it looks like there's a consensus on option C over here from the poll results. Let us look at this question. A product group is releasing internal capabilities in short cycles, okay, while the organization still uses executive checkpoints tied to funding benefits and readiness decisions. Again, a mixed scenario is mentioned in which you're delivering in short cycles, but you're still using some fixed checkpoints related to cost, benefits, and readiness decisions, scoping decisions. After 2 cycles, the team shows completed work on its board, but the steering group says the status package does not explain whether planned benefits, open risk, and milestone commitments are still realistic. So there maybe their information radii, this team's information radii is showing the progress of the work that they completed, right, in those short cycles, but they are not addressing the stakeholders' concerns of risk commitments, time commitments, and effort commitments, right? So that is missing. The PMO suggests converting the team's completed stories into percent complete reporting for the next checkpoint. So there's a proposal that, okay, right now we are measuring it in stories, right? The completed user stories, maybe velocity and all of that. Now let's convert it into percentages, right? To use the maybe earned value management or some predictive measurement techniques for reporting the next checkpoint, right? What should the project manager do? Require the team to convert completed story points into percent complete so the PMO can compare progress with the original plan. Replace the executive checkpoint report with the team board and burn down chart because agile artifacts provide sufficient transparency. No, you don't do that. Like you don't, if there's an organizational checkpoint, you simply don't replace it with your information radiators or burn up or burn down charts, right? Because they will definitely they will not be providing as good data, as good information, not at least according to the expectations of the stakeholder, expectation of the PMO, because they do require it in a percentage form. Tailor the reporting approach to show delivered value, remaining release forecast risks, dependencies, and impact on governance milestones. Okay, let's park it for a minute. Freeze the backlog until the next checkpoint so that the executive reporting remains stable. No, you don't freeze the backlog. Why would you unnecessarily block the work? So D is a very insensible answer. It doesn't make any sense at all. You don't freeze the backlog just because things are managed in a different way. Require the team to complete its story points into percent complete so the PMO can compare progress with the, okay. You cannot convert, we know that agile metrics, agile ways of measurement are not they are not absolute estimates, they are relative estimates, right? So you cannot do an apples to apples comparison over there. You can't just pick the number of user stories and express them in the form of some kind of a percentage. That is not doable, right? We know that based on every team's structure, their capability, the type of work they have and everything, that and the kind of complexity they are dealing with, their estimation is going to be very different, right? And you can't simply just convert it into a predictive baseline or convert it to some kind of percentage, right? This will not be helpful. This cannot happen. Replace the executive checkpoint report with the team board and burn down chart, because agile artifacts provide sufficient transparency. See, team burn down chart, the sprint burn down charts, iteration burn down charts, and other artifacts are important, more important for a team level thing, right? Sometimes, yes, we do share them with other stakeholders as well. But for executive decisions, for executive governance, simply presenting them a burn down chart is not going to be enough, right? You have to give specific information on whether the benefits, risk, readiness, funding decision, milestone commitments are still realistic or not, which and for all of these, for these things to be explained at a specific granular level, agile artifacts will not be sufficient, right? So they're not the right tool for presenting that to executive committee or executive stakeholders. Freeze the backlog until the next checkpoint so the executive reporting remains stable. No, we are going to just going to be wasting more time, and we don't freeze the backlog ever. Like until unless your project is done away with, or there's no need for the project, then the backlog won't exist. But in a situation like this, you just don't erase the backlog. You don't freeze it. So in this case, the correct response is C. Tailor the reporting approach to show delivered value, remaining release forecast, risk dependencies, and impacts on the governance. Things that could be shown through agile metrics should be shown through agile metrics. Things that need to be calculated, like the risk and the budget, and whatever the stakeholders are specifically asking for in a predictive or a set method, that's what you do, right? And create an integrated approach, integrated report for your executive leadership. Okay, question number 8, please. It looks like most of the people got this correct. A team is releasing small increments of a workflow tool into a controlled business environment. The working product is reviewed frequently, but some configuration decisions, approvals, and test evidence must be traceable later. Very again, the same kind of situation in which some work needs iterations and revisions, and other parts of the work are pretty fixed, and they need more transparency, more rigorous records and everything. The team says creating evidence during each cycle slows delivery. Okay. While the compliance group warns that the evidence may not be reconstructible if it is left until the end. The team is complaining about writing down the documentation or fulfilling the compliance needs or whatever. And but we know that these are non-negotiable, right? You won't be able to create them if you just pass through the project and come to the ending of the project and then want to create that evidence or documentation. What should the project manager do? Defer all compliance evidence until a final documentation cycle after the product is functionally complete. No, that is, again, we know that the question indicates already that if we reach to the end and then try to construct that documentation, we may miss it out and it may not be very efficient. Add the required evidence and traceability expectation into the team's completion criteria for each relevant increment. Okay. Pause incremental delivery until the compliance group completes all required documentation templates. No, you do not pause any delivery, whether it's predictive or agile or anything, just because you want to work on documentation. You don't compromise your deadline. You don't compromise your milestones. Ask the compliance group to rely on demonstrations instead of documentation because the team is using an adaptive approach. No, this is a wrong way to go. Simply demonstrating them would not help. They maybe want to use documentation for long term. Maybe there are legal conditions and all of that. So this also does not work. It's not an elegant solution to the documentation problem over here, right? The correct answer in this case would be add the required evidence, whatever documentation you need to add as evidence, you do that, and traceability expectations into the team's completion criteria for each relevant increment, right? So you don't pile things up till the end, but with each increment, whatever relevant evidence and whatever relevant traceability needs to be mapped, you're going to map it for every single increment, right? Rather than just collecting it at the end. And there is quite a chance that you're going to lose a lot of threads if you just keep on working on delivery and do not work on this evidence. So you're going to deliver it with the definition of done or acceptance criteria. You're going to add those regulations or compliance requirements over there. Okay, let us take question number 9. A sponsor asked for a single launch forecast for a product release that includes several work streams. Okay. Recent review sessions have changed some remaining items, while other activities are tied to external availability dates and formal acceptance windows. Again, parts indicating that you require a solution that affords flexibility, but then some parts are going to be fixed, right? Formal acceptance windows indicate that, right? The team's delivery data is available, but the project schedule also contains commitments that are not reflected in the team's board, okay? A team member suggests simplifying the forecast by expressing all remaining work in the same estimating unit used by the product team. What should the project manager do? Again, the entire scenario is like, speaks of things that are uncertain, things that need to be fixed, the external dependencies, all of those things, requiring a solution that kind of accommodates both elements, right? What should the project manager do? Convert all predictive activities into story points and forecast the whole project using the team's average velocity. Okay. Use only the predictive schedule baseline because the launch cannot occur until the fixed sequence work is complete. Okay, again, these are like two, extreme suggestions. Maintain separate forecasting methods for adaptive and predictive work, then integrate them into one release forecast with assumptions and confidence levels. We did a similar question like this before. Use the burn-up chart for adaptive work and exclude fixed response, fixed sequence work from the release forecast, right? Again, we are going to try and look for a solution that accommodates both the elements, right? The fixed nature of the dates, the external, the formal acceptance part, but also things that needs to be improved with feedback, right? So converting, again, taking a blanket approach and converting all predictive activities into story points. Why would you, if something is fixed, it's planned out in a certain methodology, why would you convert it to the story points? And why would you predict it through an agile velocity way, right? This would mess things up. You would definitely be giving inaccurate data to your stakeholders, right? The story points are used for just the team's work, right? They are not a good metric for forecasting any supplier dates, installation windows, formal acceptance activities, because these are the things that have external dependencies, right? Why you cannot practically you cannot convert them to average velocity. So this, I would say, this is a very stupid kind of an answer. Use only the predictive schedule baseline, because the launch cannot occur until fixed sequence work is complete. Again, if you're again moving to the like extreme action, right? Convert everything to predictive, right? This would definitely upset those areas which were conducted through an agile framework, in which the requirements were such, the iterations were going to happen, the feedback needs to be accommodated and all of that. So it would upset that, right? It would diminish that quality. It would introduce more risks, right? Downstream, you may not be able to satisfy your stakeholders' requirement if you plan to like do everything in a predictive through a predictive scheduling, right? So this again is not an elegant solution. Use the burn-up chart for adaptive work and exclude the fixed sequence work from the release forecast. No, you cannot do that. It's part of you have to factor that in. That is a requirement. It is not an option, right? So again, this does not make sense, that removing anything from the scope of your product just because there's a problem with selecting the right methodology is never prescribed, right? This is a complete no-no. The correct response in this case is C. Maintain separate forecasting methods for adaptive and predictive work. You're going to maintain both streams independently and then integrate them into one release forecast with assumptions and confidence levels. That is, in fact, an elegant solution, right? Different accommodations for different types of work, and then finally integrating them together to present a unified release forecast. Let's look at the question. A logistics organization is preparing to enable a new yard scheduling capability across several distribution hubs. The selected backlog items have been accepted, and the sponsor wants the capability turned on before the next capacity review. Okay, there's a requirement. In the final go, no-go discussion, like you're about whether to launch it or not to launch it, like, the project manager notices that several groups are using different assumptions about what will happen after activation. So they have a distributed, they have a, not a distributed, but a different view. Everyone has different views regarding what's going to happen after activation. Site leads believe dispatch will manage exceptions locally. The control room expects exceptions to be routed centrally, and the support team has not confirmed who will handle scheduling failures outside business hours. The product team says the increment meets acceptance criteria and should not be delayed for operational alignment, right? Okay. So what is happening over here is people having misunderstandings, and the product team saying that, okay, for our site, our increment meets the acceptance criteria and we should not delay it, right? And on the other hand, all of the other stakeholders are confused or not correctly informed or whatever, right? What should the project manager do? Proceed with activation because the product owner has accepted the completed increments. Ask the product owner to add the remaining operational activities to the product backlog or for a future iteration. Coordinate release readiness activities with operations support and business stakeholders before activation. Submit a change request to delay activation until all future process improvements are completed. See, we do need close collaboration. We do need coherence when we are rolling things out, right? And this is a situation when the product is meeting the acceptance criteria. There's no issue on that. But you cannot roll out the solution until and unless all of the stakeholders are on board, right? So you have to factor that in. So looking through that lens, right, what would be the best answer and what are the distractors? Proceed with activation because the product owner has accepted completed increments. Yes, he has. But if the operations support and all of the other stakeholders are not ready, or they do not have a shared understanding of the rollout, then this could go in a very wrong direction, right? It could be a failure, right? So you will not proceed. Ask the product owner to add the remaining operational activities to the product backlog for a future iteration. um Simply adding all of these activities will not create clarity, right? It will not solve that problem, right? It will not your It's a readiness problem more so, right? The stakeholders are not ready. So simply adding it to the backlog will not solve this readiness release problem, right? This integration problem. It will not be solving it, right? So we cannot move with this. And for future iteration, it is not even responding to the situation right now, which is something, if things are ready, if the increment has been delivered, then it should be going into operations, right? Why would you plan it in the future? So that is also an incorrect way of looking at it. Submit a change request to delay activation until all future improvements are complete. Again, this is an extreme action, I would say, right? Why would you delay activation until all future improvements are complete? There's an immediate need that you align all your operations stakeholders and get them ready for the release, right? Critical activation needs to happen right now, and stakeholders should be on board. They should have shared understanding of the solution right now, right? Again, this is just delaying the problem unnecessarily. Okay. Correct response C, coordinate release readiness activities with operations support and business stakeholders before approving activation. That is what we do, right? When we are making anything operational, we look at all of the stakeholders involved, see that they have the shared understanding, see that they are ready, everyone is on the same page, and then you roll out the solution, right? So that's that. Let us look at this question. A product team is delivering a claims processing enhancement in short iterations. Several items have met the team's definition of done, but later reviews from a shared compliance specialist have resulted in rework. The specialist supports multiple initiatives and cannot be assigned to the team full time. Okay. The team suggests completing the work first and sending batches for the specialist review near the release checkpoint. What should the project manager do? This problem is, if we look at it carefully, it's a resource allocation problem in a hybrid situation, right? What should the project manager do? Ask the product owner to lower the priority of items that require specialist input until the compliance specialist becomes available. Request the sponsor secure the compliance specialist as a dedicated team member for the remainder of the project. Coordinate with the functional manager, product owner, and team to reserve time box specialist involvement during refinement and validation activities. Allow the team to complete the increments independently and schedule formal specialist review before release approval. Okay. This is this should not be very, very difficult, but let's look at the answers. We will have some distractors. Two of them are definitely going to be out of whack, and one is definitely going to be a bit closer, the one that's closer to the answer. Ask the product owner, sorry. Ask the product owner to lower the priority of items that require specialist input until the compliance specialist becomes available. You cannot do that. See, items are prioritized based on business value, right? And you will not, maybe you can, maybe you can shuffle around if it's an edge case or whatever, replace it with some other items, but you will not lower the priority just because a resource is not available, right? it is avoiding that constraint instead of managing it, right? Just because to fix one hole in the boat, you are just making it leak from another place. That's how I would, that's how project managers should see it, right? So just to fix one problem, you're creating another problem, right? So it's not a good solution. Request the sponsor secure the compliance specialist as a dedicated team member for the remainder of the project. See, it may not be even possible. It may not be even necessary. They may be required for specific guidance, and they may not be required full time. We do not know that yet. Nowhere in the question does it indicate that. And this subject matter expert is supporting multiple initiatives in the organization, right? So why would the sponsor dedicate them completely to your project, right? So there has to be some kind of trade-off happening over there, and again, it is not a smart solution. It is not cost effective. It is not beneficial. It would compromise other initiatives in the organization, which we have to think about organizational value as well. So B will not make a lot of sense as well. Allow the team to complete increments independently and schedule formal specialist review before release approval. This again introduces the risk of rework. The team requires a subject matter expert because they do not have that particular skill set, and just piling it up all and completing the work on their own, just business as usual, and at the end you want to send everything for review, you would have made a lot of blunders, you would have made a lot of mistakes that may result in rework, that may result in deadlines being compromised and stuff like that. So not a very smart solution again. Coordinate with the functional manager, product owner, and team to reserve time box specialist involvement during refinement and validation activities. Yes, they are a shared resource. It's a hybrid situation, right? They're working on some fixed components, some planned components of the project, but also on they also need to provide input to your team, to your agile team. So you are going to try and work out a schedule, try and work out some kind of collaborative solution that allows the subject matter expert to provide their guidance, to provide you guidance during backlog refinement and validation activities, and whenever that is needed, right? But also allows them to focus on other organizational initiatives, right? So that's what you do. Remember, in agile and even in hybrid, there are going to be questions that whenever the subject matter expert is required, you don't necessarily bring them full time to the team. You always look at the working agreements, look at collaborative solution, what time works for them, what time works for you. Give them a heads up, ask them about their availability, and get them part-time on your agile project. Okay, we reached to the last question of our session. Remember, those of you who will be appearing on the exam before July 9th, you must not be spending more than 1.25 minutes on a single question, right? That's the target. But let us look at this question. A team is delivering a customer service platform enhancement through short iterations. Several increments have been accepted by the product owner and are already being used by pilot users. The sponsor reports that adoption looks positive and asks the team to continue delivering the remaining backlog at the current pace. During a review, the project manager notices that the measures used in original business case are not improving as expected. So the delivery is happening business as usual, no complaints in that, but some objectives, perhaps some metrics that were mentioned in the business case are not improving as expected. The product owner, some benefits, it means, that are not being realized. The product owner says the accepted increments are valuable because users requested them, while the operations manager says that the pilot has not reduced escalation volume or handling effort. So although there is a positive feedback from the users, but the business problem has remained the same. The business problem mentioned over here is maybe one of the objectives mentioned in the business case was uh, reducing escalation volume or handling effort, resource effort. Maybe those were the objectives you were trying to meet through this initiative. So the operation manager said that, yeah, maybe the solution is working for the users, but the business problem is not being solved as we predicted, as we anticipated it would be solved through this initiative. What should the project manager do? Review the expected benefits with the sponsor, product owner, and operational stakeholders, then adjust the release priorities or benefits approach based on actual outcome data. Ask the product owner to reprioritize the remaining backlog based only on features requested most frequently by pilot users. Continue delivery as planned because accepted increments and positive user adoption indicate that value is being delivered. Submit a change request to replace original business case measures with adoption-based metrics because the project is using an adaptive approach. Okay. So in this case, if anything is in the benefits management plan or in the business case, you don't see that value being realized, despite the fact that the solution that you're delivering to your immediate users doesn't apparently have any problem, means that there is some kind of a deep-rooted problem. You need to sit down with the relevant stakeholders, see what's going on, adjust your release priorities or benefits approach on the actual data that's coming in, right? Running a project, executing a project does not mean that you're delivering features only, right? The features or anything, MVPs are a means to an end, and that end being the business benefits you want to realize. So A is the correct response in this case. We will not prioritize features which are requested frequently by pilot users only. Feedback is good. We do, kind of recalibrate, refactor based on feedback, but in this particular situation, there's a deep-rooted problem that we need to explore. So we will not just, the end users are already happy. The pilot users, not the end users, the pilot users are already happy. And the problem is not related to the delivery or the pilot users. The problem is related to the benefits realization. Continue delivery as planned because accepted increments and positive user adoption indicate the value is being delivered. We know that just because increments are accepted doesn't necessarily mean that the product is achieving the intended goals, right? So this is just like turning away from the situation and just using using just one of the factors to gauge on the project benefits, right? It's not meeting the end goal. It's positive user feedback is good, but if it's not meeting the end goal, then what do we do with it? It's useless. Submit a change request to replace the original business case measures with adoption-based metrics because the project is using an adaptive approach. No, just because you're using a particular kind of approach, you would not change your entire business case metrics or business case objectives, right? Or business case measures. Nobody would do that, right? It's the other way around, right? You're prioritizing the methodology over the business outcomes. That never happens in the real world. Okay, with that, we come to an end of today's sessions. I know most people have already appeared in the exam, and there are just very few candidates left who are aiming for before July 9th. All the best from my side. This was our last mini marathon sessions. We'll be definitely coming up more of with new format questions post July 2026 change. So stay tuned for that. We'll be making those announcements soon. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.